What is going on, everyone? My name is Jared Haas with Frontstretch.com, and we are having another episode of Beyond the Cockpit. It is not a plane. It is not Superman. It is Nathan Byrd, who has definitely had a rich history of racing, pretty diverse racing, I would say. Nathan, what type of racing have you done in your career so far?
Yeah, that's a pretty big question. I would say all kinds. I've driven Formula cars, a wide variety of Formula cars, a wide variety of different sports cars slash touring cars on the lower end, not like IMSA level quite yet. Wide variety of short track cars, super modified, sprint cars, Silver Crown midget, Focus midget, Pro Late modified. Um, and as well as some NASCAR stuff, trucks, Xfinity, and I think that pretty much hits everything. Yeah, that's pretty much all my little disciplines. But yeah, I've driven a lot of different race cars.
So going into NASCAR, you've had a different amount of backgrounds. What's the biggest change for jumping into a different series into a stock car? We'll start, mainly we'll get into the comparisons between different Xfinity and truck, but what's the biggest differences that a driver has to learn between jumping up into NASCAR?
Well, I guess it depends on what you've driven beforehand. If you're a Shane Van Gisbergen who's driven Australian or New Zealand or whatever the supercars are for years and years, that's going to be less of a transition than if you were a open wheel Formula car like myself, Formula car guy like myself, and even short track stuff like light, high horsepower short track stuff. You're going to have a different level of basically weight to grip is basically how I like to think about it, just the weight to grip ratio. And NASCAR, especially the Xfinity car, is on the far end of the like very high weight, very low grip versus what like something I'm driving this week, and I'm at Circuit of the Americas right now, just testing and developing a new Formula car. These things are on the far other end of the spectrum, which is very low weight, very high grip, and it's less horsepower, but every car driven on the limit is going to be have some rear slip. But yeah, so that's basically just depends on where you're coming from. I'm coming from a wide variety of cars, but my official training, professional training is in like the Formula car realm. So I'm going from a car that does everything that you want to Xfinity stock car or a stock car that does almost nothing that you want, at least at the rate that you would like it to be compared to what you're used to. So you just have to adjust to the car just does everything slower, and you have to adjust your driving inputs accordingly in order to not fly off the edge of the track or into the wall or hit someone. It's a definitely learning curve coming from the open wheel Formula car world, especially.
And like I said, very interesting insight with that. But can you even have the subtle differences between the Xfinity car and truck car? You've done a handful of starts. Can you differentiate between those two? Because I know there's the climb up with like Xfinity to Cup has been a challenge for some Xfinity regulars, but some
Mm.
truck regulars have exceeded going straight into Cup Series. So is there a difference between those two cars driving wise?
Yeah, having a lot of downforce experience, I definitely feel it definitely makes sense to me that guys are having an easier time going from a truck, which seems to be more reliant on downforce than a Xfinity stock car, and they have an easier time going to Cup, which, from my understanding, is a just higher grip car, has a bit more downforce working. So it makes sense that guys that are more comfortable with a higher downforce car have the easier jump than a Xfinity driver who's used to less downforce, more slip, less cornering speed, and then they go into a Cup car and then are having to actually, instead of it coming being a come down in terms of cornering speed, it's actually a, oh wait, I have to push harder, I have to go, I have to drive deeper, I have to trust the car's grip more, and that's going to be an element. So for me, it's been the opposite. I have to come down from super high cornering speeds in order to realize, oh wait, this is only how much grip I have versus um, going from an Xfinity car to a Cup car where it's like, oh wait, I actually have more grip, and that's why guys who are Cup drivers or Xfinity stock car drivers, they get some sessions and some practice. Like Ross Chastain, I coached him up at Indy on the road course, for example. He was driving a Porsche that I was driving, and the Porsche just brakes, corners, and accelerates a lot more efficiently than a stock car that he's used to. So he actually had to search and explore and get himself to trust the car's grip more, which is something that one of those truck guys wouldn't have to do as much compared to an Xfinity guy. Um, So it just depends on what car you have more experience in. I can feel the subtle differences between an Xfinity car and a truck. Um, Although I haven't driven the same track with those two different cars, the only times I've driven the Xfinity car have been in essentially hard environments like New Hampshire, hard braking oval, Portland, and Charlotte Roval. They're both road courses, so it's not really a comparison. I haven't driven a truck on a road course yet, and I've only driven a truck at Kansas, which is basically no braking. Versus, and if I had to speculate in an Xfinity car, I probably would be braking, and I would feel that difference in cornering speed and having to slow down a bit more, and I would feel the side force of the car not stick in the Xfinity car as it does in the truck, because that's what the guys were explaining to me, is there's more side force in the truck, which is why you can run the cushion a bit faster in the truck compared to the Xfinity car. But I haven't had that firsthand experience, but just from the experience I have had at different tracks, I can sort of converge them in my mind and realize, okay, there is a difference in the downforce and the grip levels between the two cars.
And Byrd is definitely not a new name in motorsports as well. And if you've had a keen eye in NASCAR back in 2020, James Davidson had Byrd on his car as well. Like I said, give us a little bit more insight about your family history. I know bringing in your family's had a background in IndyCar and kind of transitioned into NASCAR into recent years.
Yeah, so I mean, my family, all the way back to my great grandma, she owned stock cars in the late 60s, early 70s, and which was very rare for a woman at that time. And then my grandpa kind of took up the mantle from there and started into the short track scene with Rich Vogler, midgets, and took Rich Vogler to our first Indianapolis 500 in 1985. And since 1985, we've had, I believe, 22 entries in the Indy 500 between my grandpa, my uncle, and my dad, and the most recent ones being my dad with James Davison. And then since I want to say it was either 2020 or 2021 was our final entry until ideally I'm going to be the 23rd entry in the Indy 500. But in that phase where I was still coming up through go karts and my early Formula Car years, that's when we also had James Davison. We started dabbling in the stock car world, especially the Cup Series, Rickware Racing, um, and some Xfinity stuff too. I think James had some experience in that previously. So we started dabbling in that world because of the nature of our family business. We were able to make some trade deals to make things work out and justify the increased expenditure in racing. So yeah, that's basically kind of how we've transitioned from doing the Indy 500, which is still the goal for me, to okay, now we have our some roots and some races and some experience in the NASCAR world, and we're working with Motorsports Management International currently just to help shore up the gaps of knowledge that we have in the NASCAR world, where we don't, like, in order to make deals and know people, and there's people that know more about NASCAR than we do. So we've relied on Motorsports Management International pretty heavily to help us on that side of things. And that's where sort of how I've been getting introduced more and more into the world of NASCAR.
Now, as mentioned, you're at COTA this weekend on this recording. Do you have plans set for next season? Are we going to see you back in more NASCAR? What other type of racing are we going to see you at?
Yeah, so I mean, this year was really, really heavy on the short track side of things. Silver Crown Sprint Car Midget, did a Focus Midget near the end of the year as well. Super modified. Probably even going to tack on a pro late race at Irwindale since we heard that they're shutting down. So we're going to try to be a part of that final weekend of Irwindale Speedway in the pro late. And yeah, so we hit a lot of short track stuff this year, which was kind of a make up for last year, which we didn't really get that much short track stuff at all, which is kind of disappointing. But we got a lot of road course, Formula Car, sports car stuff. And so this year's been a lot of short track and obviously the NASCAR debuts and things like that, getting some of those, and obviously Phoenix next weekend, at the time of this recording. So basically next year, and I've done some Formula Car stuff as well this year, but next year is going to be probably more NASCAR, hopefully more short track, or at least just as much short track as we've done this year. Hopefully add wing sprint car. And all the dirt short track stuff I'm doing is on pavement. Not really interested in dabbling into the dirt side of things quite yet, although I've already done some dabbling already. But yeah, that's basically the plan, is hopefully more NASCAR and much more short track, and then just continue developing and working on projects like the one we're working on at COTA, with other teams, Legacy Autosport, who I do some of my short track racing with. We're developing basically a Silver Crown road course car. So we're trying to get that one built, put together, and on track for next year. And we're developing the form of the car that we're working on this year as well. So with the Ride Drive Motorsports. So yeah, that's basically the plans, and I'm excited for them.
Well, Nathan, I thank you for this time. As always, if we see a bird flying around on the racetrack, we know it's you. So appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll see you a lot more next year at the racetrack as well.
Steven Stump of Frontstretch.com here. Come back for more great racing videos, and if you like us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.